This is an Axial base camp, a K10, that I've started preparing for the National RC Truck Pulling Association crawler class. I've already modified this truck to have a standard axle. I've changed the wheels, but I've kept the stock tires, and I made some other small scale additions before I started modifying it for pulling. I still have a few things I want to do, but here's what I've started so far. The rules for the crawler class say your truck can weigh 8 pounds or less. Now a base camp comes in way underneath that, so I've started adding brass, and I've tried to make most of my weight additions up towards the front. I've added this front bumper mount, which is solid brass. Normally I would never run this piece on a crawler because it puts the weight too high, but it's fine for a puller because it gets the weight really far forward. I've also added the Pro brass knuckles that work with this base camp because I've added the standard axle. I plan to swap out those plastic diff covers for brass diff covers that just haven't arrived yet. And I'll add a rear aluminum hitch that'll make it easier to keep the chain centered and pulling strong. Now the biggest change I made was to add what is basically a drag setup. The crawler class limits it to 2S, so I used a 2S drag pack with the Spektrum system that comes in the Losi drag car. This is a 6,500 kV. The one thing I've learned by starting and pulling is you're using way higher kV motors than I would have expected. I would have expected low kV and really low gearing, but it turns out it's really all about wheel speed. So this 6,500 kV should really pull strong. In the rear suspension, in the crawler class, you have to have a fully functional suspension. You can't lock out those rear shocks or replace them with links. So what I did is I took the stock soft red springs and replaced them with the white medium springs. When they arrive, I plan to take it one step further and install the extra firm springs. You want the rear as stiff as possible, but it still has to function according to the rules. With the added Pro front knuckles and the brass front bumper mount, this base camp now weighs 7 pounds 4 ounces, but the goal is to get it right up to 8 pounds. For this first pull, I'm going to use the weight we started with the last time we had a pulling event here. Now this is a loose, unpacked, natural dirt course, so there's no high clay content and it hasn't been rolled. So there's not a lot of traction and the sled really digs in. So you're nowhere near pulling the 30 pounds you might see at a prep track at a national event or a bigger club event. In an attempt to improve this track and get it to contain some moisture or keep the moisture in it and have traction stay consistent, I sprayed it with a mixture of water and dish soap. That seemed to work, but then I added dirt on top that I thought had some clay in it, and I hand tamped it down. Unfortunately, when I ran on the track, it just completely turned to silt, very powdery, and it was actually worse than it was before. So I think the only real solution is to add a lot more dirt, a lot more moisture, and get a roller and just compact the track. That's the only way to keep it from turning to silt when we run it with these high wheel speed crawlers. My first run with the drag system resulted in an easy full pull, and that's despite the lack of traction. Adding just 2.5 pounds went from a full pull down to 17 feet 4 inches. And that's why you need a proper hitch. The drag system definitely works and there's a lot of potential there. But up next, I got to get the weight up to 8 pounds and then spend some time tuning that speed control. Got to reduce the punch and then just keep messing with the settings until I get the results I need for pulling. As always, thanks for watching Into RC. Please like the video and leave a comment. Let me know if you've ever tried RC truck pulling.